Hey, dear listeners, 90-Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, everything I say in reaction to these shows is completely speculative, based on very little information. I usually try to speak in that way as if I wouldn't really know unless I actually assess this person. And of course, if I did, I couldn't share it with anyone. So it's just me wondering or using it as a jumping off point to talk about other things. I never diagnose from afar. If I ever do, let me know. I don't think I ever do. Some people think I am when I'm really not. Just because I'm talking about someone on the show and I'm like, well, this kind of looks like this, that's not me diagnosing them. I want to be clear about that. I would never do that. I don't even think that way, really. We don't even know if any of this is real, so we just always have to keep that in mind. Let's watch.
And I'm glad that Mohamed will have a Muslim community here. But a part of me is worried that he'll expect me to convert to Islam.
Assalamu alaikum.
So that makes me feel a little uncomfortable.
So my working hypothesis for Yve is that she exhibits behavior consistent with someone who is passive or dependent in terms of personality in general, usually as a result of early childhood issues. I won't go into the details on where it generates from, but there are common precursors in early childhood and family environments, the way that they're treated. And so I think it gives us an opportunity to see this, because we don't often identify. It's easier to look at Mohamed or Bilal and say, what a jerk face. It's harder to detect the passivity and the dependence in the other people, because we can identify with Yve, or at least I think a lot of people can, or with Shaida, and say like, wow, that's a lot of bulldozing, that's a lot of not taking responsibility. And it's harder to see how the Yve and Shaida are contributing in part to the problem. And now it could be a little bit of a victim blaming here, so I don't want to go in that direction, but passivity is a huge problem, because for Yve, I think what she's saying here, but I don't know, and that's part of the problem. I don't know if, and we'll rewind this, I don't know if she's saying, I don't want to convert, or if she's saying, I'm willing to convert with some caveats. I don't know what she's saying here. She might not even know what she wants. And that's often where passive personality and dependent personality comes from, is people literally don't even know what they want. So how do they assert themselves when they don't know what they want? They want things. They have needs, they have emotions, they have reactions, but they aren't aware of them. And so they're barely aware of them. And so they kind of try to assert it, but they're not quite sure. And they don't feel as if they deserve to be heard internally, not because of the way they're being treated necessarily by people on the outside. They just, to everyone, they just don't feel worthy of being able to speak their voice, even if they can barely detect their own voice. The voice is down there, they have to get in connection with it. But anyway, so for Yve and Mohamed, it's easy to look at Mohamed and say, what a bulldozer, what a sexist, misogynist, blah, blah, blah. But if they want to change, and if Yve doesn't want this, then she has to state it to him. And before that, she has to know what she wants. And from the beginning, the whole conflict that they've been through thus far has been around religion and tradition and culture and gender norms within that. She will say when she's in one-on-one interviews that it's just like, what was wrong? I was just wearing a bikini. But to him, she doesn't say that. In fact, I didn't show, or she doesn't say much of it. She did have that one conversation in the car that we saw. And we don't know what happens behind the scenes, but I suspect it's more of the same, but I don't know. That she got into this big fight with him about wearing a bikini when she was on a vacation with her family. This is prior to the show beginning. She was talking about how she didn't talk to him for 3 days. And I suspect if we were to watch their interactions and didn't really know what was going on inside of her mind, that she didn't like the way he was talking to her. And so she seemingly gave him the silent treatment, and they were having some conflict over text or something. And then eventually she came back around and made up to him and gave him a lot of reasons to believe that she was willing to change. She even just said earlier in this episode, last night we got in this big fight about me dressing a certain way or having a certain attitude, my friends being a certain way. And so I want to make it up to him by showing him that I'm on board with his religion. And so we're going to go to the mosque so that I can prove to him that I'm on board with his religion. Well, what message does that give to Mohamed if he wants to see a certain thing? It's, well, she agrees last night that she was wrong, and that she agrees that Islam is right, and that my culture is right, and that my views about gender are right, because she's trying to make it. She's not saying, screw you. She's saying, I'm sorry, let me make it up to you. And then in this instance, she's saying, he wants to convert me, and I don't know how I feel about it. It makes me uncomfortable. Now, what I hear is, I don't want to convert. But she's not saying that. She's saying, and she even says, it makes me a little uncomfortable. And that's in the one-on-one interview, where she's much more bold and much more able to speak her mind. God knows what she's actually saying directly to him. Now, I'm not saying she's to blame for the entire thing, because Bilal is more forceful and intimidating. I don't think Mohamed is really. I mean, he's definitely dismissive, coming from a rigid place. But I think if she stood up to him and just was like, look, if you want to be with me, or let's talk about it, because I don't want to do this, or sure, I'll go to mosque with you, and I'll dress conservatively at the mosque, but outside the mosque, but let's rewind.
I think that the people at the mosque were very nice, and I'm glad that Mohammed will have a Muslim community here. But a part of me is worried that he'll expect me to convert to Islam.
Assalamu alaikum.
So that makes me feel a little uncomfortable.
Okay, so you're a little uncomfortable and you're worried he's going to try to convert you. Tell him, I will not convert. Just say that. That's 3 words. I will not, or 4 words. I will not convert. I will not, 4 words. Just say it to him. And if that's a deal breaker, then it's over. And of course, I don't think she wants that. I don't think she wants to lose him. But does that mean you have to give up who you are?
Oh my God, that was great.
They're all very nice and welcoming.
And who knows, maybe this is the first step for you to convert to Islam.
All right. Perfect opportunity. He's saying, great, first step to you converting to Islam. Perfect opportunity for her to say, I don't want to. Is that okay? Or, I'm so sorry. I might have given you the impression that I wanted to. I actually don't. So, is that okay with you? Just say it. But I think given her traumas, it's so hard for her to just say what she wants. She's already starting to laugh. So, let's see if she can do it. I hope she can.
I don't have any plans of converting.
Okay, classic passive statement. I don't have any plans. Yeah, I'm sure Mohammed knows that. But now that you're with me, you're going to convert, right? It's around the corner. Now, to her, in her heart, she feels like I told him. And that's the classic passive dependent distortion, is they feel like they're constantly telling other people how they feel and what they want when they are not, especially if the other person doesn't really want to give and isn't really looking for excuses to hear the other person. He really wants her to convert. It's a big deal to him and is under the impression that she will. And I think she's given him a lot of impressions, if not flat out statements that she will, at the very least passive statements or lack of opposition. So I don't have any plans to convert. Just say, I will not convert. 4 words. Just say it.
I'm really disappointed that Yve doesn't want to convert to Islam because...
Well, take back everything I said. Communication is what's being tried to be communicated and what the other person receives. So with her passive statement, she was trying to say, I don't want to, and he took it that way, even though it was a very passive statement. So good on him for seeing it for what it is, reading between the lines.
she still doesn't understand the culture. And I was very open with Yve from the very, very beginning about what I expected from her, about her clothes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I'm not on board with this point of view. Culturally speaking, I have no interest and will not support anybody in controlling another gender in the variety of ways that I think he is trying to control her. Now, someone might say, well, there are a lot of expectations for men as well, so everyone has a level of control on them. I don't know. But so culturally speaking, value-wise, morals-wise, I do not support the widespread cultural religious institution of controlling an entire group of people for no reason other than you just don't want them to have freedoms, really. Or you're threatened or something, or you want to retain power, which is usually what it is. But So having said that, I believe him that he has been clear, because he is not wishy-washy about what he wants and what his culture is. I believe she has absolutely given him the impression and even flat out said, okay, fine, I'll do that. I'll change like that. While on the inside, not really wanting to do it.
I will always support you wanting to have a religious life in whatever religion you choose, but I want the same.
She has to sacrifice these things for me, because I wouldn't marry any person who doesn't prioritize my needs.
Doesn't prioritize my needs. That's an interesting way of putting it, right? It's not the religious needs, it's my needs. Well, maybe it's a language barrier thing, but anyway, it certainly fits with the man-boy persona that people are accusing him of having. Now, he's saying, I don't want to be with someone who's not going to convert. Okay, fine. Go home.
And maybe she needs...
Okay, fine. Find someone else. You tried it. It didn't work. You found out you really need that. That's a deal breaker. So end the relationship.
Okay, well, I was gonna ask, I was like, do you want a drink? I mean, you've been stressed out, girlfriend. We won't I know, I'm stressed. Then we're gonna get you one, okay? You can blame it on me. Bitch, you're planning a wedding.
So we'll see how the friends react to the triangulation that's happening between Yve and Mohamed and her friends. That the friends have already been, I think, duped into a triangulation that is supporting her passivity and unknowingly. Because, of course, you're a friend. You obviously want to be there for your friend, but you can unknowingly participate in the problem by doing what they're doing. I don't know about this situation, but in clinical situations that I've worked with, this happens a lot, where the friend is saying, okay, fine, you can blame it on me that you had a drink. That's exactly the wrong thing to do. Now, if you want to help, I guess, temporarily, that will help. But if you actually want to help your friend Yve, you should say, how are you going to tell him? It sounds like you want to have a drink and you don't like the way that he imposes rules on you. Have you told him? Have you put your foot down? Have you drawn a boundary? Have you brought him to couple therapy? Have you said this is the way that it is, or get out? Have you done those things? Do you feel safe to say those things? Why wouldn't you say those things? So that is helpful triangulation, not all the time, but often. Triangulation isn't a problem, it's how the triangle works. Does the triangle work to better the problem, or does it work to keep the problem in place or make it worse? To say, look, you're gonna have a drink, blame it on me. So, okay, let's go with that. Yve goes home, says, I had a drink, but my friends made me. Okay, so for him, Mohamed, he's like, okay, the friends are bad. You're not the problem because you didn't want to drink, but your friends made you drink, so I hate your friends. I'm going to isolate you from your friends. He's already talking like that, like an abusive partner, by the way. So let's see how they manage the triangulation here further.
I'm super stressed. I know, and I want to talk to you because I can feel it. Take a deep breath. Thank you.
And I've been saying this for a while, that the way that the friends talk to her, it is also dominant over her. She will give little hints and they'll be like, you have to do this. And then she's like, oh, yeah, okay. So you feel like you're fighting for your friend, but you're just perpetuating the dynamic where Yve is always submissive to anyone. She's either submissive to her friends or she's submissive to Mohamed. And by yelling at her or overpowering her or not asking her, what do you want? Because I'm guessing if they really asked, okay, do you want to have a drink? And she would say, well, I don't know. I don't want to make him upset. Well, do you want to, though? What do you want? Because that's what, and so that's maybe another place that you can go with this. So if you're triangulated, it's like, what do you want? Because I want to support you with what you want, but I don't want to want something for you. Of course, I selfishly want things, but I don't want that to interfere here. What do you want? And I haven't seen her friends really do that. I mean, you could argue they're advocating for her, but let's see how this goes.
We went to the mosque, and the moment we walked in that door, like, you're not allowed to be over here, you have to go over here. Like, all these rules, it's like, really?
Do you think that he thinks that you're going to eventually convert?
Yes, he does, I think, or at least until you communicated recently that you weren't planning on converting. But you see that response. Do you think he thinks that you're going to convert? If she knew what she wanted and had been clear with him from the beginning, she would say whatever is in her. I still don't really know what's in her heart. Of course, it's easy as an American, as a Seattleite, for me to look at her and say, of course she doesn't want to convert, because that's generally how I would feel. But we don't know how she feels. I think there's a good part of her that does want to convert, or does want to play along or something. Or there's a part of her that she doesn't even know what she wants and doesn't really have the ability to land on what do I want. And when Mohamed is there saying, do this, do this, do this, she's like, okay, I guess I'll do that because I don't want to lose you. And I'm checking in with myself and I don't see anything there. There's actually kind of nothing there that I can see. There are things there. So in light of, I don't feel any opposition to that, so I'll go along with it, when in reality, there's probably something going on there. But so this says something. I mean, just imagine that, that you are in a long-term relationship, and I'm just trying to think of something from my life. Early in my relationship with my wife, if someone were to ask me something like, do you want to, I don't know, well, me and my wife didn't really have anything like this, but let's say that my wife wanted to move us to Florida or something. She was really adamant. We got to get married and we got to move to Florida. And if someone asked me, do you want to move to Florida? I would say, no, I don't want, or I don't know what I'd say, but I would say some answer, some preference. And and obviously I've told her many times. So just that look on her face indicates that either she doesn't know what she wants and or she hasn't been clear about it.
I don't know. I just cannot see myself converting.
And this is just classic passive dependent language. I cannot see myself converting. And to friends and to therapists that don't pick up on that, that sounds like I don't want to convert, but that's not what she is saying. What the friend asked was, do you want to convert? Or does he think that you want to, or something? And she's like, I don't know. I just can't see myself converting. So the more that we see of this, the more I'm starting to think that she really just does not know what she wants. And I've worked with clients a lot on this. Listen to all my episodes, my audio episodes, in which we talk about a sense of self, lacking a sense of self or getting in touch with the self. When we use that language, we're talking about getting in touch with your needs and your emotions. It's not automatic that you have a connection to those things. And when you don't have a connection to those things, you think they're not there, but they are. You just have to get in connection with that. And the general practice is repeated questions, internal and also coming from the outside. How do you feel? What do you want? How do you feel? What are your emotions? What do you want? What are your needs? How is this affecting you? What do you want? Do you want to do this? And the classic response that you'll get from people pre-development of this sense of self is things like this. I can't see myself doing that. Or I could do that. Or I don't have a problem with converting. That's not answering the question, what do you want? Now, I'm never, forceful with it, but I'm like, oh, okay, we've got a long road ahead of us. And I will point out to them, and I'll lay it out for clients, and I do this frequently with people that have this issue, that I will say, so I just want to point out, we explored that for 15 minutes, and you have yet to answer the question, what do you want? I don't want to shame you, because I just want you to know that I am trying to get you to a place where you can answer that question readily. Right now, you're not at that place yet because you actually don't know what you want, and that's okay. But we have to set out to do that, and we'll do everything in therapy we can, but you have to, in between sessions, every day, set an alarm 10, 20, 50 times a day, and ask the question to yourself, how do I feel? What do I want? That repetitive checking in with yourself literally creates brain connections, neuronal connections that connect you with your emotional center, with your emotional state, with your needs, with your body, with the way that you react to things. For people who are passive dependent, they they tend to not be in connection with that. They cut themselves off from that when they were very young because of circumstances, or they were given an opportunity of attunement such that they learned to put language to their emotions and needs in any way. So it's just a classic statement. I can't see myself converting. Okay, neither can I. Do you want to convert? What do you want? But again, if she it could be a long time before she gets in touch with that.
It does not feel good to me.
And it doesn't feel good to me. Okay, we're getting more towards her needs. That's closer. And you really see her struggling, So that tells me a little bit, it gives me a little bit more hope that she's in touch with herself, kind of. So in that she's like, it doesn't feel good to me to think about converting. That doesn't feel good to me. You can see her really, and I'll commend the friend for creating space for this. So this is good triangulation. That's what I was referring to earlier. Of just like, this would be I don't know if the friend engineered this, but at least is creating space for it, where this is exactly what you want to do when you're triangulated, of just like, how do you feel? What do you want? And now she's in this space and she's potentially exploring this for the very first time.
Sleep together that night.
Is that why he didn't want you to come? Because you're coming here with me? We're not bad people because we talk about sex. We're not bad people because we asked him questions. And I can, I'll take ownership of that. Like, hey, maybe it was too far. I apologize. It's a unique situation and we just wanted to figure it out.
I just want
Okay, kudos to the friend for saying, yeah, maybe we went a little too far. It's certainly fine for them to have that conversation, but, a little sensitivity to someone else's comfort level around talking about sex is important. And I'm guessing it wasn't that hard to imagine that was uncomfortable for him. But yeah, so I like it when people do that in life and on the show, when they're like, yeah, maybe I went too far, and I feel like he is rigid around these things. You can take responsibility and apologize while not losing the entire argument or invalidating everything that you're saying.
in the next situation that it's more relaxed and more natural and he doesn't feel like he's being judged. Because obviously, you are all important to me and I love you all.
And it would make me really sad.
And this is great too. This friend is emotionally doing really well in that often for the friend, it's like he's controlling you, and that controlling of her and saying you need to break up with him and all that kind of stuff. We've seen that a lot. What I imagine is happening often underneath all of that hostility and I don't know how to describe it, but controlling and anger and is pain and worry that she's communicating verbally and emotionally and visually, that I think she's about to say, it makes me sad to contemplate a future in which you're not allowed to be friends with me. That hurts me. I don't want to lose you, and I'm worried about you. That's owning your feelings, hurt and worry, pain and anxiety. Those are the two primary emotions that are almost always driving all of our anger and all the bad things that we do. But if we stick to the foundation and just communicate that, there's really no debate around it. You're in touch with yourself, so it's much more soothing to ourselves. And it gives the other person the opportunity to know what's happening and how it affects the people that they love. And so now Yve can say, instead of going, oh, my friend is being very forceful right now and trying to control me, she can be like, oh, I don't want my friend to hurt, and I guess I'm worried too that I'm going to lose my friend. Yve is given an opportunity to really figure out the landscape and make adjustments thereof, hopefully.
I just don't want to lose you. That it's a slippery slope.
I know it's not a normal situation. I know that. Trust me, I'm the one who's dealing with all of this stuff.
And then for Yve, she has a interesting response, I think, as evidenced by her passive dependence. I don't know if that's actually an accurate hypothesis, but for passive dependent people, when other people depend on them, because she's expressing dependency on Yve, she's saying, it makes me sad, I don't want to lose you because of what you're doing and your relationship. I am being hurt by this, which makes total sense that the friend would feel that way. It's rational. It's good that she feels that way. It means she's a human being and she cares about her friendship with Yve. And so in that moment, Yve feels responsible for her friend's pain. and she says something kind of deflective. She's like, yeah, me too. It's how do you think I feel about this? And the vibe is like, instead of saying something like, oh, yeah, I don't want to lose you too. And I'm glad you are sad about losing me, but I don't want to lose you either. So I don't know what to do right now, but I want to figure out a way that we don't lose each other. Just something along those lines. Or even just like, yeah, I'm with you. I feel similarly. I don't want this to happen either. Instead, it was, just like, because for dependent people, they're used to being underneath. And for someone to say, I depend on you, it's very scary for them. It's not normal for them to have that. And so they don't really often know what to do with it.
If you've ever been in a relationship that's taken like a not so positive turn, this is how it starts out. So I'm having a hard time finding the difference of him truly like using his religion as something that it's like a way of life versus a way to control her.
Yeah, I mean, there's hints of that. I'm guessing since this is 90 Day Fiancé, it's just going to get worse as the season goes on. Whenever we reach these kind of tipping points, I'm like, well, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and then it often just gets 10 times worse. So I suspect it might, but who knows? But yeah, she used the word earlier, slippery slope. I thought she was referring to the abusive cycle. And yeah, you could absolutely see it that way. I don't want to think Mohamed is capable of that, but he's certainly showing some signs that should be addressed.
Like even her coming out tonight, the fact that he was like having a little fit about it is like intense. And, she has Theron to think about as well. And it's just like, this is not something that can just be undone if it's not working out. So I just hope that they're able to get on the same page and he's just as supportive as she is to him, because she deserves that.
And a big red flag of control and abuse, at least the beginning stages, that will usually be sustained throughout the abusive relationship, is upsettedness, intimidation, rules, consequences to the victim when they want to or have hung out with their friends. Now, it often comes from jealousy and worry of attachment loss. I think I always want to say this because people will talk about abusive, coercive, controlling relationships as if the end goal is to control. And that's not my model. That's not how I see it. Of course, there's no way to scientifically measure this, but in all my treatment with perpetrators, I've always found that control is the ends to a means. They don't understand it won't get them there, but they feel like it does, or they feel like it's their only way to get there. It was modeled to them growing up. They're trying to get attachment security. Some people will control for other reasons. Antisocial people will control for just control reasons. But even then, often I find that it's because deep down they're actually wanting attachment security, that they don't want to lose their partner. And so because they're so insecure to think about their wife going out with other women, there's this little tiny, for everyone really, there's this little tiny worry, I suppose, whether it's noticeable or not. It's normal to be like, oh, I wonder if someone will hit on them and then something bad will happen. It's just something that will enter your mind potentially, or at least be something in the back of your mind. To people who are attachment insecure, it'll be a very big statement in their mind, right? And to people who are abusive, they react to that big statement in their mind of, this could be bad for our relationship. This could be bad for me in terms of my attachment. I will control. And one of the ways that I control is to do whatever I can emotionally or maybe physically to prevent my partner from hanging out with their friends. So it doesn't make it okay, of course, but it does provide a way to treat it, which is what I will do with abusive people. I work on that model, and it actually helps abusive people to feel, it's sort of like when people are suffering from drug addiction, like Johnny Depp would talk about how he used it to to deal with his emotions. We don't, at least I don't, when I treat people of those kinds of disorders, I don't say just get sober. I say we need to do a parallel process where you're both attaining sobriety and also working intensely on how to deal with your emotions without going to substances, your traumas, all that kind of stuff. And it kind of depends on the situation, depends on the level of PTSD and recovery and how long therapy will take. Sometimes we might actually do a sobriety period before they can even start working. But the point is that we often in our society just say, you need to stop that. So with abusive people, that's often how they're reacted to. You just need to stop that. Instead of helping them to get their needs met, not through that, but through a different way. And then they don't need to control if you give them another tool. You know, it's like you have a fisher person, someone who fishes for food, and you're like, you're killing all the fish, and you just take away their fishing rod, or you say you can't fish anymore, and they're sitting there starving. Well, eventually they're going to go back to fishing because it's the only thing that they know how to do. Whereas if you give them a plow and say, here's how you cultivate a field, then they'll do that. If they have a way to get their needs met that works, then they will do that. If they only have one way of getting their needs met, then they will do that. So you want to help them. And when I would talk to perpetrators, eventually I figured this out. It took me a while. I would say all this to them, and I'd say, we're going to, and it would really resonate with them. You know, they would say, oh, that's why I'm abusive. That's why I'm controlling. Oh, you know, it takes a while to break them out of the brainwashing, but once they get on, and it helps them to feel, and it's accurate, I think, one, and two, it helps them to feel like they're not an evil human being, because abusive people are not usually evil human beings. Amber Heard, for example, Johnny Depp, both abusive to each other. Some would argue Amber Heard a lot more abusive. Some would argue the opposite. But if any of that is true, I don't believe either one of them are evil. I believe both of them, particularly Amber Heard, but Johnny Depp as well, were looking for attachment security and would trigger each other, and because of their upbringing, they would turn to extreme destruction and harm to each other verbally and physically. And it's important to know that if you're a clinician, it's important to know this as a society. If we're going to help these people, we do not go with their behavior. We do not validate their behavior. We do not consequence it. It's criminal behavior to be abusive. We want to do something about that. But if we're going to help them, then this is how we can get them to not do it again. All right. Well, if you haven't become a patron of the podcast yet, that's how you can support what we're doing here. Many of you have already become patrons, so thank you so much for that. And if you can become upper tier patrons, that's even better. But only if you want to, and only if you can afford it. And yeah. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.